Interesting. Okay. What's going on, guys? Get started here just shortly. Give it a minute or two. Let everyone trickle in. What a boring day, though. I gotta say that. Today was definitely not one of those days where I kind of felt like by the end of the day, even though I came out green, it's like one of those days where I felt like, you know what, it really just wasn't worth my time compared to what yesterday's price action was. But we pretty much have a well-defined formation that's going on right now with SPY. So that's what we'll take a look at, see, what our upside projection is, what's the downside projection, and then I'll take some ticker requests, see what you guys want to look at, pretty much. But overall, today's price action was just, it felt like literally just going in a seesaw, going up, down, up, down. It really just didn't give us the range that we particularly wanted in terms of how we had what a trend day yesterday. That was not the case today. What's going on, Miguel? I mean, I kind of want to start the analysis, give it another minute or so, let everyone trickle in. I know some of you pretty much trickle in a little bit late. But again, today's price action, hopefully you guys kind of just kept it small. Today was definitely one of those days where it was primarily scalping. If you held for longer than you should, you probably more than likely got burned because days like today, this is a scalper's market in which you're pretty much going for those small miniature moves and you're basically being a sniper. What's going on, Abid? So you're trying to be a sniper in this type of market that we had today, particularly, because if you were looking for those huge price action swings, you relatively didn't get that. You could probably make a case for maybe the trend in Apple for most of the day, because that one would actually showed its relative weakness compared to the broader market. But other than that, you had a few names that actually had some good upside here today. What's going on, Jared? So what was I was pretty much looking at this morning as I was pretty much trying to find out, are we going to get that follow through from yesterday's price action? SPY dropped 17 points yesterday. Were we actually going to get such another wild swing, whether it be to the upside or downside? I was not pretty much saying that that was going to happen. I don't think the market was going to get that kind of follow through today. I did come on. I said that I was pretty much watching for the upside, 394, 395. I think we clipped 394 here today. So 394 was clipped, and then my downside target still remains as 381 is pretty much my overall PT that I'm watching here for the downside. So what did we present? And to the end of the day, we basically just made a nice little bear flag. To me, that's basically what we made off of that entire downside action that we had from 408 all the way down here towards that 386 mark. We basically just made a bear flag with today's little seesaw type of action. What's going on, Randy? So two things can basically happen here. Either we end up making another leg to the upside on this bear flag, or we end up being ideal. They end up gapping us down and we break the bear flag overnight here. So that's pretty much what I took away, in which case the market's really not going to likely end up giving us the opportunity for that directional move. It's going to choose it overnight, and it depends what you're holding here overnight. So either we're likely going to get the gap down here overnight. A lot of traders are going to feel like they missed the move to the downside, or we end up getting the gap up, in which case you're going to be floating above the top of this bear flag, and that's when we're going to see tomorrow morning. I would say likely before open, it would be that we're likely going to end up breaking the resistance of the bear flag, and then it's going to fill what would be a bearish pattern. So that's pretty much the two scenarios that I'm looking at. In terms of upside, what I'm looking at is this 396 mark. So 396 half would be my upside here going into tomorrow. And then in terms of breaking down, maybe a gap down 381 is my downside potential. Obviously, I have more than one level marked up. I do have 383 here. And then below the 383 is my 381. Final mark, in which case, if we do get a full on breakdown like we had in correlation with yesterday, then that could take us all the way down towards 378 to pretty much close out the week, is what I would pretty much look at. That's about 11 point downside from what SPY is sitting at right now. If this really does want to, given the fact that if you're looking at the length from the top of basically the flagpole of the upside on this bear flag, if that's going to be equal, basically, yeah, you're looking about roughly about a 10-point move to the downside, in which that may end up taking us down towards that 378 here to close out the week on. It would be basically a low note, very volatile week. All right. So that's pretty much my upside. I think my upside is a little bit more limited. That's why I say 396 if I really had to say, if we're gonna break 396, then 398 would be that ideal next level that I'm watching. 398 half is that spot in which is confluence with all that chop that we had basically between May 13th up until May 16th. We had a little bit of chop within that 398 half zone, and that would be the level I would expect to retest as a resistance. So 396, 398 half is your upside. Downside potential, you're watching that 383, 381, and overall downside projection would be down towards that 378 spot. So those are pretty much my levels up, down, depending on how the market wants to give us. I'm just in the mindset that the market's going to end up trying to just, gap us down, in which case we're going to end up missing that, what would be the breakdown, because now you're just in that peculiar spot, just sitting at the support of this bear flag, in which case it could end up invalidating. We test the resistance and we push north, or they end up gapping us down overnight, and then we're going to be left feeling like, oh, we just missed a move, we missed a breakdown. All right, and that's basically what the mindset is. So I do think we're gonna see 381 tomorrow. That's just my mindset. The other thing that stood out to me today, and I pretty much was uh, giving levels on Tesla. We had the cloud alert that also went off, but watching Tesla here this morning, we had this nice little megaphone action. And what was interesting about this one was that I was watching the potential downside under 387, but what did they do? They pretty much wicked us down under 398 on the support of the megaphone. And what did they do? They trapped the short. They trapped all the shorts right here. All the shorts were basically pretty much trapped once you broke this little trend line support off of this megaphone, and they trapped everyone all the way down towards 394. And what happened? The shorts got squeezed. They literally just got squeezed. We took it right back up. 719 was that level that I said I was watching. I've been saying that for the past 2-3 days. 719 was that big level that I was watching, up or under. And what did we get? We pretty much tested that 719 quite a few times, as you see. And then we finally got that big, massive candle that took us right over. I had a PT going up towards 736, as high as 736. But I also had this nice little zone, pretty much related back to a little bit of confluence, support, resistance, dating back a little bit towards pretty much earlier on in the week that we had. So that was almost pretty much sitting between that 729 to 731. That's where I was looking for a little bit of a supply zone, if you want to say. And that's where I was particularly looking for the reversal if we couldn't make it all the way up towards 736. And what did you see? We actually got a nicer wick, 734, and we ended up getting a reversal. Now, what did I see towards the end of the day? And I kind of commented in terms of the chat. I mentioned in Cloudbase. I was like, if I was to swing something tonight, it would have likely have been Tesla puts. Why did I say that? Is because you're basically looking more so at a head and shoulders formation right now. You have a little bit of a shorter wingspan of the left shoulder, the head, and now you have your right shoulder, which is literally just waiting for that drop. So that's what I'm looking at. Otherwise, in correlation with SPY, if I said it's gonna invalidate the bear flag on SPY, then they could pretty much invalidate the head and shoulders though, and we do go north. So that is why I particularly chose to stay cash overnight here. But if we're gonna end up getting that flush under on the head and shoulders, you're watching this under 704. Under 704, then you're pretty much targeting here this low from May 12th, sitting at 680. Below the 680, I pretty much have two levels that I'm watching, 662, and then I have 649 is my next level I'm watching under that. All right. So those are pretty much the two big levels I'm watching besides taking out that May 12th low off of from Tesla here. All right. But that megaphone definitely was an interesting one today, and it was pretty much once I saw this reclaim that trendline support, I pretty much was in the sense that the shorts were going to get squeezed, and we were likely going to see this at least to that mark of that 719 resistance, which you saw it made that push, and this was just a massive squeeze candle, took us right up, and all the shorts got annihilated right there. All right. So that was pretty much what I'm watching. Again, you'll see the head and shoulders. We'll see if it pretty much plays out tomorrow to the downside. Take out that 680 low from May 12th. Otherwise, this will get invalidated, and then 736 upside is still pretty much valid, potentially for a 0 day tomorrow. All right. Shop was another one. That one actually was on my radar. I'll take a look at that one for you, V. This was just a beautiful one. I saw some flow coming in on this one. There was some pretty much persistent buyers. I think it was primarily off of the daily is what caught everyone's attention on this one. You had what was basically an inverted head and shoulders off of the making here. So if you see this, if I pretty much just draw it out, you get a visual of what I'm looking at. Your little inverted head and shoulders action, and that was just a beautiful curl that you had right up. So uh, you pretty much get the idea of what I said. So that's what I was watching here off of the daily. Once we ended up breaking over 380, that was the ideal spot that you wanted to see us break over yesterday's high, and that was just a full-on curl right up to form that right shoulder. So that was a beautiful one. In terms of just the price action that I saw, I pretty much mentioned it. I was watching to pretty much take out what was basically our resistance from all this price action on the 13th. I was looking to take out that 400 mark. Once we took out the 400 mark, 403 was pretty much my PT, which was confluence to what was our, no, I want to say our closing high on the 13th and pretty much your morning high as well. That was that 403 level. You got a little bit extra. I think I was still looking for 421 tomorrow potentially. If the market does hold up, 421 is still the level that I was particularly watching. But off of the daily here, 421 was my upside, but what I'm really looking at is pretty much the confidence that you have right about here. 422, 421. If you get over that level, then this is a full-on gap fill that you're potentially watching. Now, do I really think that we're gonna get into this gap fill that the market's gonna allow it to? I'll be honest with you, V. I don't think we get into that gap fill. If I'm being honest with you, I think we're likely gonna end up seeing a little bit of a chop, in which case we're gonna go right back down once we tap that 421 mark. So be cautious about that. I would hope that we probably get to the gap fill. I don't think this market condition is going to allow it. But 421, 422, you get over that those levels, that 421, 422 spot, then you're looking at the gap fill here. That's over 424.20, 424.88. All right, and that's a pretty nice gap fill that you're looking at, and that would set up for a beautiful Friday if we were to stretch up that high. I'm just a little bit hard pressed to say that the market conditions are going to allow it, but obviously that's the levels that you want to see. If you pretty much get back under this 380 level, that's when it's going to get particularly ugly, and that's when you're likely going to end up retesting what was basically your low from yesterday's price action. All right. So under 380, that's likely going to end up being a short. I wouldn't particularly be hard pressed to play the short, but the upside is what I'm more interested in, and you would target this towards 321, 322. All right, V. Hopefully that kind of helps you out there. Jared, SoFi. I know SoFi was just a hot commodity. That was just a beautiful one today, and that was. I think someone called it out. I wasn't paying attention to this one as much as I should have, but that was a hell of a move out of SoFi. You had the beautiful falling wedge action off of this one, and what did you actually close at? You were right into the downtrend resistance, is what you really hit, and you rejected off of. So where would I be looking at to see where this particularly goes at? The level that actually has my interest the most right now is right here. This is the level that pretty much has my interest the most right now, sitting roughly at this $8 half basically. 8.52 is that spot that I'm watching. So you're gonna look to see if you get that break towards that $8.52, and then watch for potential retest. So if you get the retest, then you're likely coming back down towards 7.5, in which your case you can lose about 75 cents to a dollar on the retest, and then that's the point where you're gonna end up particularly going long. So I want to say that this is gonna be more so a move for next week. I was actually contemplating, depending on tomorrow's price action, this may end up being a sneaky move into the newsletter for next week. Because my overall PT that I was particularly watching was this $10 mark. That's actually where you had your distribution here between March 18th up until April 5th. That was your distribution. That was also your level of resistance, that $10 mark, and that's where you're gonna look at. So I'm a little bit more interested in the fact that you may get a nice little gap up to that 852 spot, and then we get a slow regression to retest the falling wedge, and that's where I may end up looking to see if I put it in the newsletter for next week. So little sneak peek on that, in which the case that might end up being a beautiful play going into next week. All right, so that might be, if you get that, about $7.50 come next week. That'll be about no, from $7.50 to $10. You're looking at a $2.50 move on a penny stock, pretty much, if I want to say that, for how much it's priced. So that would be a beautiful move for next week. So but that's the level I'm watching. Let's see if we get over. We pretty much break today's high, and then you're looking at 7.5 is what your resistance is going into at least tomorrow. All right. Let's take a look, Jared. You said Netflix. I'll take a peep at it. I know Netflix actually had a pretty good day today. Let's see what's going on with Netflix. See if I dial in likely into the 10 minute. And I think I dropped a chart on this one in the ideas channel actually. All right, so what happened with Netflix today? We had a beautiful little descending broadening wedge action. And what's actually scary to me right now, when I saw quite a few of them right now, I think Apple had one, Microsoft had one, which I'll get to. So I think someone mentioned Microsoft. Little bit, I'll get to Microsoft in just a bit. But that actually had a descending broadening wedge. From my experience and pretty much what has been become one of my favorite patterns you guys have heard me say is the descending broadening wedge. It's typically a bullish pattern. That's what's a little bit more of a pretty much I want to say a fluster to me is that with how the market's shaping up to be to the downside, it's a little bit of a conflict to me. In which case, that's why I wanted to stay cash tonight. I want to see if we invalidate that the bear flag on SPY, or if we end up pretty much going south. But this would typically end up breaking this resistance. That level of resistance that you kept smacking your head on basically was right around this 185 high. You want to say 186 is that ballpark number. You want to see Netflix get over 186 tomorrow. If you get over that 186 mark, then that'll be a beautiful ride up to test the gap fill here, which I'll highlight right now so you see how high up it is. This is the gap fill that you're particularly looking at. So we break 186 here, 186, and your move is up towards 187 half to test the gap fill at 187.70, which you're going to look to pretty much have your finger on the trigger, if not take a little bit of profits off of that dollar move. Obviously, it's only a dollar from that breakout of 186, so that will pretty much be your resistance spot that you want to be, keen about, be notable about, and monitor your position. But once you break over that 187.70 into the gap fill, this is just a smooth sailing up towards 189. So that's going to be a beautiful one to keep on watch. But I need to see the market conditions ideal to really get a beautiful breakout out of this. Otherwise, if we end up breaking here under this 183 spot, in which case you see that's pretty much been your confluence and your level of support. If I highlight it here, you can tell the confluence in support. And I'll pretty much change the color so you notice how that's been your confluence of support that you pretty much tapped as a resistance, and then you pretty much anchor it as support pretty much for most of the day. So you want to hold that 183 level. That's going to be pivotal. Otherwise, if you can't hold 183, this comes right back down towards 179, 179 to 178. All right. So that's what I would particularly look at in terms of upside or downside, depending upon market conditions tomorrow. All right. And hopefully that gave you a better idea. The other one that you guys mentioned, Microsoft, this is another one. You had another descending broadening wedge action. I was expecting this to pretty much push at least up into the resistance before we got the rejection end of day. I was pretty much looking for that 257 flat. We didn't even get up that high. Now, what am I particularly looking at? I'm looking to basically hold this low here of this 252. If we can hold 252, then we can make that reversal right back to the upside, and potentially we get another $4 move from 252 back to 256 half, and that'll test our resistance of this broadening wedge. In which case, my resistance is sitting at 258. So that would be a beautiful setup to the upside if the market allows it. 252, you test the resistance at 256 half, and overall PT is 258 on this one. So that would be a beautiful setup. Otherwise, if you take out the low at that 252 mark, then we're pretty much looking at breaking the lows from May 12th, which is sitting at that 250 mark. All right, and that's not going to be pretty. All right, so that's pretty much the other setup. And then the other, I think, descending broadening wedge action, pretty much similar to this. This one actually gave you a nice little fake out on Apple. You pretty much wicked right above the downtrend resistance for the descending broadening wedge. And what did it do? It pulled the rug right with the market. This one in particular is a lot more heavy in terms of the selling pressure. I think there's millions of dollars out there in terms of the amount of shorts that are out there. I'm more hard pressed to say that the upside here is worth it on Apple, more so than other names in the tech sector. I think there are other names that you look at for the upside, but if I'm being realistic here, pretty much extending the downtrend resistance. If you were looking at this tomorrow, you're pretty much going to want to see this break over that 138 level. You break 138, you have minor resistance basically sitting at 138.81. And then my overall supply level that you're watching will be this 140. 140 basically to 140 low to 140 half is what you're sitting at in terms of your supply, in which sellers are pretty much going to end up being out of this one and shorts are going to be reloading on it. All right. So that's pretty much what I would say about this. But other than that, downside wise, this is just heavy right now. My next level that I was pretty much watching was right around here. Was that 135 low? Below the 135 low, then that just brings us right down towards 132. All right. So 135 low and then 132 is the next levels to the downside. But the selling pressure is just heavily on Apple. If you're looking for upside, I think you look pretty much elsewhere. Is what I would pretty much recommend. All right. Jared, you mentioned Pfizer. Let me take a peep at Pfizer. Pfizer was another one that I had pretty much in the ideas channel. This is one that went. This is another descending broadening wedge. Beautiful bottom trendline support. If you snipe the bottom, you saw that little intraday double bottom action here at this 49.59 spot. And what did it do? That was literally just a slingshot right back up. Gave you a full-on dollar move into resistance, and it rejected right with the broader market. The good sign was that it was able to pretty much recover. So what are we going to be looking for? We're going to be looking for a move here that's sitting right about this 51 spot. 51 would be your breakout spot on this one. And then if you break over 51, your level of resistance supply that you're watching is 51.38. That will be the level in which I would say is where I expect sellers to step back in. I think your upside is a little bit more limited here as well right now. I know that off of the daily here as well. If I pretty much look at this, I'll delete what I have here. If I pretty much show you the trend line support that you had, you basically pretty much broke down on it. If I actually show you off of this right quick, yeah, you pretty much broke down, and this looks like it is a retest right now off of this trend line support. That's basically what it looks like. So I think the trend is pretty much overall broken on Pfizer, and that's why I think the upside is going to be limited, even though that's a very small time frame of a bullish descending broadening wedge action. All right, but that's still nonetheless, I think that's a pretty nice move here. If you go in the money on that, especially on a 0 day, you can capitalize on a great gain, even though it's going to be under a dollar move to the upside. Not sure you mentioned or spoke about it. Jumped in. Thoughts on Walmart, especially with Ross shitting the bed on earnings today. QQQ. I haven't looked at QQQ honestly. Uh, let me see if I take a peep at it. I haven't monitored it too much to be honest with you. Let's see if I actually look at this right now. So levels that I would pretty much be watching here on the Qs. The one level that pretty much stood out, and this is pretty much the biggest level that you want to worry about going into tomorrow, is sitting right here at this 297 high. 297. See the spot here. Yeah, 297.83 is a spot that you want to watch on the Qs here, Tim. That's a spot where I think that's likely going to be determining the fact if it's going to be a heavy resistance going into tomorrow morning, or if that ends up being not even pretty much as far as how high we get tomorrow. Because if we gap down on the bear flag, that level is going to be pretty much invalidated. But that's the level that I'm watching for continuation on the upside here, in which maybe we have a fluid movement to the upside tomorrow in the overall market for the Qs. But 297.83 is my upside. Otherwise, what scares me about the downside is that you have this gap fill down at the bottom that's likely going to end up being filled here. That's pretty much disgusting. That's going to be a horrible day. And that's likely going to be, in which case, we're going to be right testing into that gap fill if we get a gap down on that bear flag that SPY is pretty much presenting itself right now. But this gap fill will complete at this 297.82 mark. And that's where I would expect us to pretty much get a dead cat bounce. And then we even will likely end up going lower, in which your major support level for tomorrow will likely be 267. That would be disgusting. All right. So 267 is my downside, and then obviously the gap fill is what's primarily on watch for tomorrow. All right. Other than that, you mentioned Walmart. I haven't looked at Walmart in quite a while. This one's just, I mean, obviously I've seen the price just go down and down. I know that it's just dying with Target right now. And for this, to be honest with you, I probably have to look at the weekly right now. Let's see what that is. Literally a straight line down. That is a disgusting candle, to be honest with you, off the weekly. Let's take a look. Let's see if I can find out what the confluence level is that we need to identify right now. So one particular level stands out to me here. This is one level that definitely stands out, which I think we should find as our major support level. There may be another intermediate level that I'm going to look at above, but this actually, this should be your major support level. 110 At point 32 is your major level. That basically dates back to your high from January of 2018, Josh. That's going to be the spot where I particularly feel a little bit more comfortable loading up, especially if you're trying to load up for long term, which I'm assuming you're looking more so as a long term position. 110 is that major spot that you're looking at. You got your January 2018 high. That was also your basically your breakout and support that you basically had a nice push off of, right, dating back towards July of 2019. You pretty much retested that level, anchored off, and just blasted off towards your high back from March of 2020 as well. So 110 is the ideal level. If I wanted to be a buyer of Walmart and I felt comfortable in terms of that, it will be that 110 level. Otherwise, if you're just looking for a minor level for pretty much, I want to say, a short term play, the level that you're watching is 117. 117 low would be the level that you're particularly watching here. This would basically was a little bit of a resistance support level that you had between September 2019 up until June of 2020, and that would be the level in which I'm working at. All right. You're short this damn thing. I'm not gonna lie, you're actually in a beautiful short. I mean, you can. I will. Here's the thing, though. If you're in that short, just be a little bit cautious about this at that 117 mark. You could likely smack that 117 by morning. Just be cautious about the fact of whether you want to take full profits, partial profits, because that might end up being your minor support level, right? Or maybe a near-term support level, for that matter. But I do have this going all the way down towards 110. It's just gonna be how long is it gonna take to get down to that 110 level? All right, and that's pretty much the bigger thing that I would say. But I'm pretty sure if this drops $2, you're likely gonna make bank off of this. So 117 is gonna be a pretty decent level for you to at least make bank on that. All right. But other than that, pretty much. Hopefully, you guys had pretty good day. I know it was not an ideal day. I think everyone expected a much better day following yesterday's price action. You're pretty much all literally hyped to just short the hell out of this market. But that's what this market does, right? It caught everyone off a surprise from yesterday's price action. Think we were just gonna nosedive yet again today, or you're gonna have an opportunity to just go vertical right back up and retrace. I want to say maybe about 20-30% of yesterday's price action. That just wasn't the case. We stuck within about a $4 range on SPY here today. But tomorrow should be, I expect tomorrow to be a lot more of a better range that we can trade tomorrow. So that should be the highlight. I just hope no one got pretty much premium chopped. I'm sure some of you that probably sat in Tesla for most of the day expecting a bigger, larger move, maybe sitting out of the money. That was pretty much the more of a tough spot. So, but other than that, what today pretty much told me, what I really got was that it felt like a lot of these oversold names from yesterday pretty much got their bounce. If you saw early on in the morning, Amazon, Shopify, Netflix, the semis, Nvidia, AMD, they all got their bounce. In which case, they all pretty much had oversold territories. They got a beautiful bounce, and then once the market starts to drag back down, those names will just start to roll back over. Is what I basically get from that. But that was pretty much what I saw. I think that they actually are gonna go right back down. But tomorrow will be a telling story whether we break that bear flag to the downside tomorrow and gap down, or if we end up retesting the resistance of the bear flag and then 396 is in play tomorrow. All right. But I'll leave it there for a wrap. I think short and sweet. Tomorrow's 0 day. We'll do some 0 day lottos. So we'll see what the market presents by morning, and then we'll be able to likely give you the level so you guys can get into some 0 day plays tomorrow. All right. But I'll keep it short and sweet. We'll wrap up right there for today's live. But appreciate you guys joining. Hopefully, I was able to drop some charts and help you guys out analyzing those. But appreciate you guys joining. I'll